Along with Superintendent Dave Brazel, myself, we came in on the night looking at the building approval side of things, so looking at the building performance and the building fire safety aspects. It was an under 25 metre high building, so that straight away it had no sprinkler system within it. It's certainly no stairwell pressurisation or anything like that for the fire crews. Predominantly the building was made up of fire compartments, and the fire compartment along the top floor was held in place with a double-lined fire check, which is a gyprock construction that's basically designed to seal in the fire. Unfortunately, in this situation, the fire did breach through that fire-rated ceiling, and then it's got into another fire compartment, which is a common void that runs through the whole top floor of the building. To basically look where that fire-rated ceiling joined a large fire-rated wall that separated it from the neighbouring building. And where that join was, it appears that that is the area that it most probably failed and allowed heat to penetrate up through that join. The fire-rated ceiling is meant to be joined and sealed up against that wall, and that's unfortunately where it appeared to take through. There is a fire-rated wall that separates the units, however that stops at the ceiling height. So once again, once it gets through that ceiling, we've now got a second compartment involved in fire. This first photograph is quite important because it shows a lot of smoke already penetrating out through the roof space, which to me that shows that the smoke's already and the fire's already got into the ceiling space. And at that stage you can see the fire's only still quite a small fire. It's pretty much a bed, maybe the bedside tables. So the fact the fire has already been able to get up that wall and up through that ceiling space shows that it's quite an early failure for that smoke to start spreading, and obviously the heat and fire obviously spread very quickly. 2 minutes later, the next photograph now shows that it's pretty much flashed over in that room. It looks like it's penetrating out through the glass out onto the balcony. But at that stage now, there's a large amount of smoke coming out through the roof space. And initially we were looking for the possibility that it may have spread out through the balcony and up through the non-fire rated ceiling on the balcony. But from those photographs, I think it's quite clear that it has already actually breached that fire rated ceiling. So another pleasing thing from the building approval side of things was to not see fire crews committed to actually standing on the roof. Once you started looking at the structure underneath the roof, you could see it was heavily charred and very unstable. So I think that's a good thing that we're very cautious about putting crews into those spaces.
We were sent up with a tick in the aerial to have a look on the top of the fire floor to see what was happening. When we got up onto the up above the building, the tin was white hot. From experience, I know that when tin's white hot, it's not long before it's not tin anymore. So it wasn't possible to send any firefighters up onto that fire floor.
So looking back at this incident, that fire isolated stairwell really became the safe point for the fire crews. So in planning your attack, you've really got to position yourself back there. There was the potential for ceiling collapse and roof collapse. When you look at some of the photos of the amount of damage to that ceiling space. So that's where your safe point's going to be. There was only one stairwell for this building, which is once again perfectly legal under the standard. But in this building, that fire isolated stairwell really maintained its integrity very well. So the other area that we looked at, and it was really pleasing to see that on the night, the fire crews actually grabbed the plans for the building that unfortunately turned out to be plans that were actually not completely accurate, but they certainly assisted the crews to know a little bit about what they were dealing with. However, unfortunately, they didn't actually show the correct configuration. So that's something probably even when you're doing MIRs, to have a look at those plans in the fire control room and see if they are actually accurate with what you've actually got on site.
We've become to rely so much on installed fire protection systems, and certainly they're robust, Australian standards, they get tested. We inspect to make sure that the occupiers are doing the right thing in maintaining these systems. We rely so heavily on them and we have such great faith in them. It's a great thing. But we also have to remember the buildings that we have right here in our patch that don't have the full suite of the most modern fire protection systems. We also have to cater for times that there's failure. Failures happen. That's why maintenance occurs. But we can't take for granted the buildings that we have that don't have the full suite of features, and we have to make sure we cater for that, certainly with pre-planning, and in my view, a lot more old-style familiarisation.
It wasn't until the end of the incident, approximately 10:30 in the evening, that I was physically able myself at that time to get up to the fire floor and go through a walkthrough with my Deputy Operations Officer, Christian Carell. At that time we had an appreciation completely of what our firefighters were facing on that fire floor, and we were satisfied that all the decisions that we had made from the ground and operations were adequate.
I think there was a couple of critical aspects. I think the initial call to go to a fourth alarm, based on, very early on, basically with the initial call, allowed the weight of attack to approach and but still be able to be managed. I think the positioning of staging and the approach of forming them up, getting them in a control point and bringing them in as required, once it was established, worked really well. There is an aspect from understanding how staging works in the broader, for these larger jobs, crews need to come in with an understanding of how it works, what's expected of them, and that needs to be understood more broadly than just the inner city stations. That needs to be, by the nature of these style of jobs that require a large resourcing, it needs to be understood by everyone within the response area for it.
In hindsight, I would have liked to have had the ability to pump some foam in through the aerials. It was something that we were probably trying to just constantly catch our tail while it was roaring through there. But thinking back, if we could have got some foam through the aerial, I think that would have made a difference with just the wetting agent. All of the firefighters and the crews on the ground did an exceptional job, and it's very rarely you walk away from an incident where it goes so well. I think that incident went really well. You can always do better, and you can always, but as far as flow, incident control, communication, people really making a difference and an effort, it was an excellent job, and I think we got some excellent outcomes.
There were some issues obviously with equipment that occurred, and subsequently some of the process that sits behind that equipment has been identified, and I think whilst the process stuff has been corrected as a part of creation of new checking regime, but I think the GWN, or the transition to GWN, is going to address some of our challenges in communicating in that type of environment. But crews, when they arrive, bring the basics with them. Enable yourself to be able to communicate. Bring the type of tools that are required for the task that you are at. You're at a high rise, so you know certain things are going to be required, and bring them to the forward with you, and it will enable you to be tasked and less time be wasted for you to go back to your clients to get it.
We had Supervisor Neil Beasy on. Neil's one of our longest serving supervisors. When that came in, Neil was pretty unflappable, and it was with a mixture of junior staff and also the senior staff, but Neil was able to, obviously with his inevitable style, keep very calm. He played a pivotal role in the performance, the high level of performance that was displayed by the fire communications officers at that event.
Having the command channel operating, and so the station officers or the crew that are going in have two radios, provides them the flexibility to be monitoring and providing messages and feedback. So I think just the basic preparedness, understanding, keeping your messages short, concise. It is a busy time, everyone needs to be talking. Your ops officer is inundated with crews and transfer of information, so they need to be short, sharp and to the point. And I think just that general familiarity with what messages are needed and when is critical.
I reflect on Alan Brunacini's teachings and about the way that command becomes very disorganised very quickly if it changes too rapidly and too often, particularly in the phases before it's formally documented through either a taxi, tango support or other means. While it's still in the mental incident action plan phase, to me we have to be very cautious about taking control immediately. However, senior officers need to understand and accept that as soon as you pull the handbrake on and give a code 8, you're accountable. Now, if seniors, and including myself, accept that point, then from there it's about the operation running effectively and being able to be supported appropriately.
Social media, yes. So we do live in the age that every person has a camera. There has to be an assumption that everything we're doing is captured on film and often streamed live. So we did have streaming live with commentary going. We certainly had, apart from social media and the intensity that comes around that, we also had intense media interest, helicopter over this incident for a considerable period of time, streaming live footage or updates, you know, to the community. So I think there's some messages there about the perception of how we perform, getting critiqued by people not necessarily with any in-depth knowledge, but an ability to have an opinion and voice it. And we need to be mindful of that. It doesn't need to affect how we do business. We just need to go about our business in a professional manner and be aware that that is the environment we now operate in.
Every job you go to, you gain a little bit more experience. You watch the more senior people, and you always take something away from the senior people. You start reading signs of different jobs and you put that into the back of your mind, and then I don't know how it works, but it seems to come to the fore when you can remember stuff that you'd seen previously.
The most valued lesson that I take from this incident would be training and preparation. Knowing the personnel that I work with, knowing the personnel at Kent Place Fire Station and how professional they are, and knowing the professional position that all our firefighters take within the state, I was confident that anybody could walk onto that incident ground and assume the role that I gave them, carry out the duties that they were tasked with, and at all stages throughout the entire incident, I had the complete confidence of everybody that was there. At one stage, we had approximately 40 firefighters lined up in teams of 4 awaiting tasking. This is something for me that was quite surreal to see that many firefighters on a fire ground, let alone to have them all standing there kitted up with BAs on back, ready to be deployed. It was certainly an impressive sight and a proud moment for me and a number of other officers that were there on the evening to see how professional our firefighters can be in those situations.
The reason this incident was as successful as it was because of the professionalism of the people involved. And when I say that, people knew their job and they got on and did their job, and they didn't do it with, with any fuss or any issue. People very readily put their hand up after short breaks and forced breaks. They were ready to get back into it without any question of their involvement. And that comes back to professionalism, just the word. You know, we talk about professionalism, but we are a professional fire service, and the job went really well. But all our jobs need to go well if we are to serve the community, as we should be serving the community. And that requires everyone coming to work every day and trying to be the best firefighter they can be on any day. And that means, knowing your patch, going through those aspects of, learning your technical and your tactical skills, and not only, learning them initially, but doing the maintenance of them. Getting involved in exercises where you're challenging yourself as whether it's a shift, a station, an area, challenging yourself to deliver a better outcome. And I think that was evident with the crews that were involved, in that they had been out exercising, they did know their patch, and it showed. And that's something that everyone involved obviously can be proud about, but that's something that everyone should ensure that they do as part of their business, and something that Queensland Fire is certainly aspires to make the norm.
The end result is we have 4 people that are still alive today due to the fact that our firefighters were able to do their job to the best of their ability, that there was an evacuation plan in place, and that an on-duty staff member was able to rescue one person that was exposed to smoke and fire within that unit that caught on fire in the initial stages, and that we walked away without any firefighter injuries at all. With the number of firefighters that we had there, the potential was there for injury, and that's the most pleasing thing for me as an officer in charge of an incident, to know that everybody went home at the end of the day. It was a team effort, and not one of us would have ever been able to do what we did without each other there supporting.